Hey guys, welcome back to Rossoneri TV. I'm Gio and I'm here for the Lazio against AC Milan match preview. Match that will be taking place tomorrow, February 13 at 8:45 p.m. Italian time at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. A very big fixture for both of these teams. Both teams currently in the fight for the Europa League, and everyone knows that a win will mean and speak volumes for both of these teams. So it is a very crucial match. Montella, as mentioned today in the press conference, that this match won't be decisive, but in my eyes, I see this a bit differently because I do believe that this is a very decisive match for Milan and Lazio. I think that when you're playing against your competitors, you have to make sure that you do pick up the 3 points. You have to make sure that you do get the win, because these are the matches that might prove the difference at the end of the day and at the end of the season. So I definitely believe that you need to win and get the 3 points. Milan won't have an easy task at all against Lazio. Let's do recall that Milan actually won the first time this season against Lazio back at the San Siro. 2-0 was the result of that game, with Niang and Bacca getting the goals. But this time around, it will be a different story altogether, and that is because Milan has a very decimated team, lots of injuries, lots of suspensions, and frankly speaking, Milan won't have the same lineup that they did when we first played Lazio and came out victorious in that match. Lazio, on the other hand, are coming off a very strong win against Pescara, 6-2 last weekend, a massive blow to Pescara, and really it was a lot of goals for Lazio, and this could prove fundamental to them as well in that goal difference, because matches like those definitely improve your goal differential. And, it's important to get as many goals as possible, because at the end, like I mentioned, it might come to these little details. Now, another thing that is very important to me, and why Milan must at least get a draw or must get a win altogether, a positive result is a must for Milan, because getting back to these little details, at the end of the season, if we are in fact tied with Lazio, it's gonna come out to head-to-head records, and we have already picked up a win against them. So if we do at least get a draw against them tomorrow, we will have that advantage over them in case that we finish the season level on points. Now, obviously, that might be something quite improbable, but you just never know. At the end of the season, these things might actually come out to be decisive. So like I said, Montella did mention that to him this game is not decisive, but I do believe that it is a very decisive game, because we must beat our competitors for the Europa League, and that's pretty much the only way that you can gain an advantage over them. It's not really always the fact that you must win every game, but I do believe that against your competitors, to qualify to something, you must have the upper hand. You must be the one coming out victorious in those ones. So we'll see exactly what happens tomorrow on that regard. Getting back to Montella's comments, though, he did mention something in the press conference, and that obviously has some reference to the fighting spirit that this team had against Bologna on Wednesday. Of course, a match that was highly controversial under many levels. Like I said before, it was filled with suspensions, filled with injuries, and overall, it was just a match that personally I had never seen before. At the end of the day, we got the win, and Montella spoke exactly about this fighting spirit that this team seems to have. Now, we have seen it over the course of the season, where Milan has played in tremendous fashion, especially in the second half, to come back from losing situations, or just, to reduce the gap. But we've always seen Milan, or at least most times we've seen this team, have this fighting back spirit. And that, to me, speaks volumes. I think that the team, even though the results haven't been the best in January, this spirit could prove to be, and could prove to go very far from Milan. It could be something that Milan could use to their advantage, and hopefully this translates in what I mean for tomorrow, because even though we're not going to have the best possible lineup on paper, I definitely hope that this fighting spirit comes out once again and hopefully gets us the 3 points out of nowhere. But without further ado, I want to speak about this lineup because there are many changes, as you would probably expect. So let's take a look at this right in this moment. Let me just pull up the graphic here for the formation, and here it is. So we got Donnarumma in net, obviously no question about that. Expect to see this identical defensive line tomorrow with Abate starting as a right back, Gomez and Zapata being the center back pairing, and Vanjoni playing on the left. So we won't be seeing any changes whatsoever to this starting defense. This is exactly what Milan will be going with tomorrow. Obviously, Paletta is suspended. Romagnoli is injured. He will be out at least until the beginning of March. Therefore, there's no surprises that Zapata and Gomez will be starting once again tomorrow. And speaking about Zapata and Gomez, we did see them against Bologna. They didn't do a very bad job. I think they actually played decent, but we all know that Lazio is a completely different team, and many people, including myself, are particularly worried about this defensive line, where really there aren't many certainties. Vanjoni, once again, he played a very good game against Bologna as well, but now we have to see what these guys are all made of. And I definitely hope that they will come out with a great fighting spirit, and hopefully that will be enough for Milan to get something out of there. But we all know that we're going to need a tremendous performance against Lazio if we want to pick up the full points. Now, speaking about that midfield, there might be some changes in this. One thing's for sure, Kuchka won't be playing as he's suspended as well. So we're going to be seeing most probably a midfield made up of Bertolacci, Locatelli, and Pasalic. There's also the option, according to some reports, that Poli might be getting a start after showing, once again, that fighting spirit coming in on the pitch from the bench in that second half, and he was even injured at some point, but he kept fighting, and he did a very good job altogether. Personally, I wouldn't start Poli in this type of match, but I will definitely consider the option of bringing him in the second half, maybe to add to that fighting spirit, maybe to add to the physicality that this team usually lacks in. So I will definitely bring a work ethic type of player in the second half to replace the work ethic of Kuchka, but I wouldn't start him particularly in this game. Talking about the forward line, of course, Suso, Bacca, and Deulofeu are expected to start. Once again, highly controversial, the fact that Bacca might actually be getting the start instead of Lapadula, but it has been said that Montella is still considering his options, and Lapadula might actually be getting the start instead of Bacca. What he's going to choose, I simply don't know, but there's also been an hypothesis of seeing Ocampos starting on the left side with Deulofeu playing in the front as a striker and Suso on the right. Personally, I don't think we'll be seeing that option going forward in tomorrow's match, but Montella definitely needs to consider the inclusion of Lapadula in order to replace Bacca. So that's pretty much it for the starting 11. Once again, we could expect some changes going into tomorrow's match. This is obviously a probable lineup, but more times than not, the lineups don't really change. But I am expecting some changes nonetheless. I definitely hope that Lapadula gets a start, because I think we need to see some fresh ideas. We need to see some fresh blood in this team. And I'm not saying that because Bacca has really missed a lot of opportunities lately. He hasn't been capable of doing good things. He hasn't been capable of really doing anything besides just chilling there, waiting for the ball. And at the end, he doesn't even have that end product. So, Lapadula definitely deserves, I think, a chance to prove his worth. A game against Lazio might not be the best solution for Lapadula, but if we need to include something to spark the team, especially against a great opponent, you cannot start with a guy like Bacca that more times than not is very invisible, not very evident on the pitch. So we'll see exactly what Montella decides tomorrow, but he did mention that he has some doubts regarding the midfield and the attack, but there are no doubts whatsoever for the defense. And like I said, Abate, Gomez, Zapata, and Vangioni will be the starting defensive line. Now, let me know your thoughts about the match, what you think for it. What are you predicting ahead of this match? Will it be a very difficult match for Milan to get the 3 points, or do you think we can still build on that result that we picked up on Wednesday against Bologna? Maybe use that as a momentum shift and maybe just improve our streak. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think Lazio will be too strong of an opponent for us considering all the injuries and suspensions that we have? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. But before I do get into your comments, I would like to briefly speak about a new addition that has been brought into YouTube. You guys might not be aware of it, but there is this super chat option now, which allows you to donate to the channel. If you want to mention something, if you want to have your message pinned to the live chat, people will be able to see it on top of the chat if you guys are willing to donate. So simply click on the money sign, which is right under what you're supposed to type in the comments if you're interested in donating and helping out the channel. Of course, make sure to mention your name as well if you do donate. So just wanted to speak briefly about this added option that will be present in YouTube live streams from now on if you're not aware of it yet. But getting into your comments, MH81 says Lazio will be winning 2-0. Milinkovic and Immobile are the likely scorers for him. Abdi Ali remains a bit more optimistic. He says a 1-0 Milan win. Personally, I see it very difficult that Milan will be able to keep a clean sheet against Lazio. Let's not forget that they're coming off a very big win against Pescara, 6-2 last weekend, and they're playing at home. Very, very rarely do they ever not score at home. The only match I could really think of in recent times was the match against Chievo, in which they heavily dominated that match, but Chievo somehow got a late winner. So maybe there could be a replication of that type of performance, and Milan could sneak out a result just like they did against Bologna, but I wouldn't really bank on that just yet. Abdul says, we do trust Milan, but the amount of injuries and suspensions on top of Lazio's goal-scoring form will be very difficult. If we had all of our starters, we would destroy them, and that's exactly what I mentioned there concerning Milan. You know, once again, Lazio is in very good form. They're scoring a lot of goals, and Milan's injuries and suspensions are definitely not helping the situation. I just hope that we're capable of coping with this opponent. Ibrahim AC Milan says 2-1 for Milan. He thinks Lapadula will score. Well, hopefully we'll be seeing him playing, because in recent matches he hasn't even gotten a chance to play. And you know, we've seen in the last game against Bologna, we could have actually seen Lapadula being introduced to the game, but we all know the situations and the circumstances in which we were victims to, and that included the suspensions and the injuries and so forth, and that is why we didn't see Lapadula being introduced in the game against Bologna. But hopefully this time will be the right time for Lapadula, and we will see him getting some playing time against Lazio. Clayton, not very optimistic from him. He says maybe a 3-0 Lazio win. Luka Chuch says if we are to win, we have to finish our chances even if we have very few. That is a very good comment there that you said, because lately I don't think Milan has really been capable of finishing their chances. Let's go back to the game against Bologna, because even before we were down 2 men, we definitely had a lot of chances. I recall a few chances from Pasalic himself before obviously getting the game winner. But in the early stages of the game, we had at least 2 to 3 chances in which we should have buried, and that would have, in my opinion at least, would have changed the outcome of the game. So whichever chance we get, I know that we will be getting chances, that's for sure, but whichever chances we get against Lazio, we have to make sure to put the majority of them in the back of the net. I think that's the really only way that we're going to be capable of winning this match. We have to take our chances, and we have to prevent Lazio from taking theirs. I think really if we do succeed in that somehow, As I said, recently our finishing hasn't been the best, but if we do succeed under that aspect, then we might find a straightforward road to the result. Petrit says if Milan are critical and finish their chances, they will be winning 2-1. Nick Guillermo says if Milan wants to play a 4-2-3-1 formation, Montella should put Ocampos, Honda or Sosa, and Deulofeu behind the striker. Personally, I would put Suso on the right. I think that's what you meant instead of Sosa. But yeah, that's probably what Milan would be doing. Ocampos either on the left, Deulofeu right behind the striker, and Suso on the right side. I think that's possibly the best best lineup Milan could have in that 4-2-3-1 formation. Dan Maldini says, don't get me wrong, I want Bacca to be successful, but the formation 4-3-3 isn't doing it for him. Deulofeu behind him in a 4-2-3-1 formation could do it, in my opinion. Well, yes, it might be able to do it. Suso has those qualities to create plays. We all know him, that he's capable of playing as a playmaker. He does that a lot from the wing, but maybe he could have also a very influential role playing in the middle there, right behind Bacca. But I think it will be even more influential if Suso could play behind Lapadula. But we'll see exactly what happens. A lot of you guys are also predicting a 1-1 draw. Christy and Jeffrey are saying that. Jeffrey says an Anderson goal in the 27th minute and Suso in the 88th minute. Abdul says we need to approach this game like Chievo did against Lazio. Classic Catenaccio is needed here, and with our wingers, this will be perfect, but Deulofeu as a false 9 scares me. Well, I watched that game. I watched that game between Lazio and Chievo, and I saw that Chievo was really sitting behind the ball. They were really parking the bus in the hope of getting a draw, and at the end, they had one counterattack, one mistake from Lazio, and that's where they got the result. Personally, I don't think Milan will be going with this approach, even though it could prove to be fundamental. It could prove to be something that could benefit Milan, but I don't think Milan really has those tendencies. Oftentimes they're not. They want to be controlling the game, even though we know that we have difficulties doing so. Our tendencies are to control the game, to move the ball forward and hopefully get something. Our counterattacks recently, at least I've noticed it recently, have been really slow in the build-up. I think a lot of times we have chances to move that ball front and, try to hurt the opponents. But I think our build-up to those counterattacks have been really, really slow. Simply, maybe the lack of quality in the players could be a reason, or just continuous running from our wingers probably get them more tired than not. So personally, I think, we need to keep as much possession as possible. Obviously, I'm speaking about good possession and not the usual pass backs between the defense and the goalkeeper, as we normally see with Milan. But we cannot afford to give out mistakes. What I mean by this is we cannot afford performances like we did against Juventus in the Coppa Italia, for example, or Napoli a few weeks ago in the Serie A, where Napoli got off to a great start, 2-0 in the first 10 minutes, and the major cause of this was due to the numerous mistakes that we were making. Napoli, of course, was a very strong team on the counterattacks, and they hurt us a lot. So hopefully we don't have that type of approach, and we limit our mistakes, we keep the possession, and finish our chances. I think those are the major keys if we want to get a result tomorrow. RMVS Gaming says, I think some people are underestimating how strong Lazio really are. I can't see Milan keeping a clean sheet, but I can see our counterattacks being too strong for Lazio. 2-1 Milan for me, Suso, Deulofeu, and Parolo for the goal scorers. What I just said, the opposite. The counterattacks haven't been very fast, in my opinion, and I think Lazio is capable to cope with that lack of speed, that lack of precision that our Milan players really have. So, personally, I don't see our counterattacks being our forte, but hopefully it will be the case tomorrow. Pasquale says, Ciao Gio, Milan will be confident from the last win, but Lazio are in form too. Milan will be looking for the draw as a result. Will sit behind the ball a lot. 1-1 is his prediction as well. Personally, I hope that we don't sit behind the ball, and I hope that we don't go for the draw, because that will mean that Lazio will still hold that advantage over us and still will keep that 3-point gap between us and them. So hopefully we don't go with that approach. But then again, the quality of our lineup is not the best. It's not the usual lineup. So we're going to have to be very, very careful with how we approach this game. That's one thing that I have to emphasize here. And Montella needs to make sure that he plays his cards right and not make stupid decisions, whether it's lineup decisions or substitution decisions, because he really needs to hit the nail on the head if he wants to get something going in this match. Christy also says it's a hard game. I think 1-1 will be the final result. Immobile and Bertolacci. MH81 says, I would play Luis Adriano. He's made for those type of matches. Unfortunately, someone hasn't been keeping up with the times because Luis Adriano is not playing with us anymore. Y says, what about Cutrone as a sub? Actually, Cutrone hasn't been called up to this game. I was looking at the call-ups from Montella for this game, and I didn't see Cutrone's name there for some reason. But there are some Primavera players that were included. Let me get those names for you as we speak. Yeah, so the names that have been included from the Primavera are Zucchetti and El Ilali. But yeah, Cutrone hasn't been called up for this match, to my surprise. Giuliano Lapadula says Lazio will score early and Milan will score in the 44th minute. And the last 20 minutes, they scored the winning goal. DJ Ram says Milan will win this match 2-1. What about Calabria? Calabria has been actually called up to this game. I was expecting him to still be out on injury, but he won't be starting tomorrow. He will be starting from the bench. RMVS Gaming says our counterattacks have been slow, but with Deulofeu, Lapadula, and Suso, I hope it will be a lot faster. Well, Deulofeu and Suso definitely, I think, contribute to our counterattacks a big time. But unfortunately, like I said in recent games, you know, teams have pretty much figured us out. They know that we use those wings, and even though we're using counterattacks, we're using players like Deulofeu and Suso to, you know, spark up those counterattacks. Teams will know exactly what to make out of those counterattacks, and that to me is the major problem alongside our slow build-up. But hopefully that will be changing, and Deulofeu will definitely improve in terms of you know, self-esteem right after that pass, that assist that he gave to Pasalic in the dying moments of the Bologna game. Football Bro says the game probably might go Lazio pressuring more for like 25 minutes, and then Milan will start to attack. I think a strong start is a must for Milan. Even though we don't get a goal, I think that we must definitely be very strong defensively, and we cannot allow Lazio to dictate the match in the opening 30 minutes. Also, we cannot allow Lazio to score early on, because we already know that we're going into this match with a hill to climb, given the lineup that we're going with. So we don't need to make things harder for ourselves. We don't need to start even on a worse foot than what we already are. So hopefully we'll have a strong start. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to get a goal in the early goings, but just play a strong, solid match and avoid getting scored on by Lazio. Karim being very optimistic, very positive. He says, if Kevo won away at Lazio, we can do it. MR Kazim says, it's going to be an important game. We need the 3 points. And Inter and Atalanta have won today, so we need the win. Yes, Inter and Atalanta have won their games today, and that is definitely another motive as to why Milan needs to keep up with the race and win this game themselves. DJ Ram says, who do you think will win, Gio? I think this is a very difficult game to predict. Lazio obviously favored for a number of reasons. They don't have all the injuries that we have. They're playing at home. They're in better form than we are. So I definitely think it's going to be a hard match for Milan. But if Montella does get the lineup right, and what I mean by that is including Lapadula as a striker instead of Bacca and making the right decisions for that midfield, we might be surprising Lazio. We might pull a result out of the hat. MH81 says, I think we should start like this: Donnarumma, Abate, Zapata, Gomez, and Vangioni, Jose Sosa, Locatelli, and Bertolacci, Suso, and Lapadula, Deulofeu. Not too bad at all, in my opinion. Very similar lineup to what Milan will probably be going with, but I'm not quite sure if Jose Sosa will be starting actually. Volcano Game says, is it true that Galliani tried to sign Mexes back, but Fasone and Mirabelli stopped him? Please answer, Gio. No, I haven't heard of that, to be honest. I definitely haven't heard about Milan trying to sign Mexes back. Abdul says, Gio, would you prefer Locatelli or Sosa in the center mid role? Locatelli didn't have a chance to improve against Bologna, and Sosa was alright against Sampdoria, but he had a good game against Napoli. I will definitely go with Locatelli. Sosa to me was very, very disappointing against Sampdoria, and unfortunately, Locatelli was actually sacrificed last game against Bologna due to the sending offs, due to the injuries, and that's why he had to come off in order to bring another defender. So we didn't really get a chance to really see what kind of impact Locatelli was going to have against Bologna last game, but I would definitely go with him again against Lazio. I wouldn't risk Jose Sosa. Saif says, the Milan from the first half of the season must return. The strong mentality must return. Very hopeful despite the injuries and suspensions. Forza Milan. Let's definitely hope so. I definitely hope that we do return to that form. Unfortunately, I did mention a few months ago that, we cannot just continue with the same starting 11 game in and game out, because these players will either get injured or they will get tired and they won't be able to continue on a weekly basis. That's exactly what happened with a lot of our starters: Antonelli, Di Sciglio, Bonaventura, just to name a few. And unfortunately, we don't have very secure backups that could, replicate our form in the first half of the season. Hopefully, Deulofeu could prove to be a vital point for us in that second half of the season. But personally, I think that will be very difficult to replicate Bonaventura's job, for example. Santi Serra says, hi from Italy. Hi, Santi. Abdi says, Gio, I hope no red cards this time. I definitely hope so too, because we have gotten way too many. If I'm not mistaken, I read a statistic where I think we had the most red cards in Europe's top 5 leagues this season, which is pretty crazy. Matteo says, Montella said that he wants to play Deulofeu as a false 9. He has been trying Deulofeu as a false 9 in trainings. But, whether or not he will be starting in that position tomorrow, all remains to be seen. Personally, I would like to see him in that position. I don't really see the problem with that. But it really all depends whether Montella has the balls to start Deulofeu instead of either, a guy like Lapadula or Bacca, for example. Rafael Suarez says, Gio, what's your starting top 3? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, to be honest with you. I'm gonna miss Bonaventura so bad, says Football Bros. Is Lapadula gonna start tomorrow, says Robin Milanovic. We still don't know. We're still not entirely sure whether Lapadula will be starting. If I had the decision to make, I would definitely start Lapadula. But my mind is telling me that Bacca will be getting yet another chance tomorrow, unfortunately. Christy says, Gio, do you think Donnarumma will renew his contract? Yes, I do think so, but we all know the situation at the moment. Sue Muscat says the attack should be Suso, Deulofeu, and Lapadula. Completely agree with that. Do I hope that Niang returns? At the moment, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm thinking about our current situation with the club. That's what I'm focusing on. I'm not thinking about players that are currently not playing for us in other teams and are playing for other teams at the moment. Sue Muscat also says Pasalic should be starting. I think Pasalic had a decent performance against Bologna. But to be honest with you, up until that goal, he had some very good goal scoring chances that he didn't put in the back of the net. And I think that he needs to be criticized a bit even for that. Because, like I said before, if we had scored those goal chances that we had at the beginning, especially in those early 10 minutes, those first 10 minutes of the game could have gone in a different way. And I think that Pasalic should have at least finished one or two of those chances. Of course, he did score the game winner, and that's what kind of made him redeem himself. But, maybe he has built his confidence after that goal, and maybe, he does deserve a chance to start tomorrow's game. But that's going to wrap it up, guys, for the match preview. Don't forget, tomorrow, Lazio against AC Milan, 8:45 p.m. Italian time is the kickoff. Of course, we'll be having our live stream watch along as we usually do every match, and that will be followed by the match review. So don't forget to join me in tomorrow for all of those videos. Don't forget to subscribe to Rossoneri TV to stay updated with everything going on at AC Milan on a daily basis. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy the video. And of course, don't forget that you can also donate to the channel right now if you want by clicking on the money sign right behind where you type a comment. So you can do that as well if you're interested. On that note, I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I have been Gio, signing off, as usual. Forza Milan.